Now, sometimes it's not necessarily an issue with your request, but you want to check out the response. And so that's as simple as you'll notice there's no response information here. Our response headers are empty, our response text null, there's no status, so we don't know what we got, even though later it will be a 404. And the reason for that is that we need to use a different event if we're going to try and do that. So we're going to use the complete event, which is fired every time an API call finishes, whether it's a successful API call or an unsuccessful and there's an error, doesn't matter. The complete event will fire. So we're going to go ahead and run my program again. And we'll wait a little bit because it's actually going to finish the call now before it prints the information. And there it is. So you'll notice most of the stuff looks the same, but we do get some data back. So we can actually see the error now. And we see that the success block is empty. And beside request headers, you can check your API key and all of that again, of course. But the important thing is this response headers section. So this is going to be very important because it shows what you're actually receiving back from the CloudMine server. So this is after the JavaScript SDK has made its request and it's returned a response. So in particular, you'll want to make sure you get the status that you expect. In this case, you'll notice we get a 200 OK back from the server, which means we are actually hitting the server. So that's good. So we're hitting the server and we're getting the 404 back. If it was a 500, there might be something wrong on the CloudMine side, that kind of thing. And then this is a very important area also. This is your XUnique ID, which is a specific header used by CloudMine. And it's used to ensure or to track your call once it's within CloudMine's systems. So if you can't figure out what's going on, this unique ID can be sent to CloudMine support and we can actually track everything that your call does once it's in our systems to help you debug. So as a last resort, this is a very useful piece of information to have access to. But for the most part, you should be able to get by figuring out what's going on, just looking at your response and making sure your URL is correct, your API keys are being sent as you expect, and just getting all of the information from the API call. So there are some other ways that you can check. Curl is another big one, although it's not covered in this tutorial, but it makes it very easy to determine what might be going wrong with your API call. But yeah, that is, for the most part, if you're using the JavaScript SDK, this is how we recommend you check, just by adding the complete event and just checking to make sure your API call looks as you would expect it to be. So hopefully you find this method of debugging your calls useful, and we will most likely cover some of the other methods in future videos, so keep tuned. If you want to look up any more information on the JavaScript SDK, you can find a lot of it at our documentation site, which is just cloudmine.me/docs.